To answer the question, what is a good ground? And to show why it's not always a simple answer, we've come to a location here at the back of a typical house that has close access to 3 different ground points, or 3 different ground potentials. The first being the flower garden here, second being a water faucet, and this is copper pipe going into the house, and the third being an AC electrical outlet over here. A lot of body voltage kits come with short ground rods that you can insert into the earth to use as a ground reference point. So in this case, I'm going to put it into the garden here and find a spot without some rocks. If you're unsure of the area that you're inserting the ground rod, to be sure that there's no cables, you can have that checked. In most places you can get that done free of charge, so be careful with that. But we're just inserting this ground rod to show with an AC voltmeter here. In this case, you want something that's capable of measuring down into the millivolt range, that we don't want to see any significant voltage potential between earth ground, the water pipe ground, or behind me here, the AC electrical ground. And so I can confirm that by measuring between any 2 points that the potential between these, between earth ground, the water pipe, earth ground, the electrical outlet, and then compare the electrical outlet to the water pipe, all the possible combinations. You want to make sure that there's very little voltage, and in this case, that's what I'm seeing. Everything is usually below 0.1 volts, something like that. So they're all at relatively the same potential. Okay, so when you're referencing an earth ground, that's assuming that the soil is moist and that there's a good electrical connection to the ground. And this little ground rod is not very long. The longer the better, but again, longer ground rods, you want to be sure that you're not inserting that ground rod or hammering that ground rod into something where there could be a gas line or anything like that. So you want to have that checked out. The point being is that if everything is wired properly at your location where you're living, that the earth ground, the water ground, and your AC electrical ground should be at the same potential, and they can all be used as a good ground point. But there are many locations where it's not wired properly, so you want to be careful. So it's not always a good idea to just run a ground wire from, for example, your grounded bed sheets. It's not always a good just to run a thin wire down to an earth ground, because, well, is the soil that you're grounding to, is it damp enough? What is the thickness of the wire? It really should be pretty thick to have a good connection there. So do some testing, and this is why we can't answer in one simple sentence what is ground and what ground should you use. It really depends on how things were set up at your place and all the variables that I just told you about. Okay?